Get out of my head.
Brad, no!
Well, stimulating is like...
The story opens in British Columbia, 1959. Beneath the menacing, ghostly sky of the mountain, weird echoes bounce off the walls. One lone climber, escaping the harrowing climb, darts down the rock face of the cliff, breath heavy, eyes wide open to the sights of relentless terror. The rope slips, he jumps in a blind panic, and disappears into the endless chasm below. Later reports indicate that not one climber in this climb makes it back alive. It is officially a disaster, and the mountain is closed. The locals name it the Forbidden Wall. For the next 63 years, no one will climb the mountain again. Many years later, some climbers are traversing a neighboring peak. Sad to say, Sean, a young man whose grandfather was a climber who disappeared decades ago on the Forbidden Wall, is in the group. As the team prepares to celebrate at the summit, reports break. The Forbidden Wall will be reopened. Only the best climbers in the world have been invited, and with mountains as Sean's life, this is a chance he cannot turn down. Sean's teammates have other aspirations, but this is personal to him. It's an opportunity to walk in his grandfather's footsteps and find the truth. The climbers have no way of knowing, but there are hidden motives behind the people behind the invitation. The professionals are not being sent to the summit for the glory of accomplishment. Something is buried in secret at the peak, and it wants to be found. In his house, Sean's father, Connor, is enraged and scared to death. He lost his father to that mountain once, and he is not losing his son too. Sean's mother begs him not to go. The pursuit of a dream is a stronger force than fear, and in the end, Connor lets go of Sean. Reaching the summit is not the goal of your life. Coming back is. Sean swears that he'll be okay, and then goes. During his travels, Sean meets an enthusiastic man who has a fascination with paragliding. He mentions that his ultimate dream is to launch off the summit of the Forbidden Wall. However, climbing on the wall is limited to the world's elite climbers, and he begs Sean for assistance. But Sean explains it is beyond his control. Upon arrival at base camp, he is greeted by the expedition leader, Colton, who is one of the world's best climbers. They know each other from climbing together, and Colton greets him warmly. The Forbidden Wall is located in indigenous tribal land that has been considered sacred for many generations. The tribe resisted outsiders for decades and believed a dark presence sleeps on the summit. There are a few key members of the group. Carrie is a competent climber. She is assigned to sit at base camp as the ground support. Radio is the communications expert. There are 6 climbers who will make the ascent in pairs. Colton will be with Jesse, Emily will be with Lucky, and Kristen will be with Brad. Sean remains as designated backup, prepared to replace anyone if necessary. Before Sean and the group begin their ascent of the mountain, the tribal chief issues an intimidating warning that the mountain is not to be drilled, no damage must be done to it. Climbers are limited to the natural cracks. He repeatedly reminds them that the mountain is sacred and that they must not disturb its silence. That night, Sean walks into the forest bordering their camp and happens to run into the chief again. To his surprise, the chief knows Sean's name and knows details about his grandfather. He talks about when Sean's grandfather once summited the mountain and was assigned a sacred mission for failure. The chief states that ancient evil is sealed away at the summit of the Forbidden Wall. Long ago it came from the sky, driving their ancestors to madness until it was sealed there by the greatest warriors of the tribe. The chief dispels any doubt regarding Sean's grandfather's sacrifice for the world's safety, and that because the mountain is now opening again, that seal would be weakening. The chief warns in prophetic tone, "Silence is its weakness. Do not listen to the noise, or you might become a puppet to it." Before he departs, he seems to take off and presents Sean with his carved staff, stating that it will help seal the evil back again. Sean is shaken but still a skeptic and proceeds back towards camp, uncertain whether to believe what he has heard. The next morning, the ascent begins. The team progresses at a slow and steady pace, with radio having trouble with communication and Carrie managing them from below. The beauty of the mountain camouflages its cruelty, freezing winds, ledges skinny enough for a person to fit, and sounds emanating into the air off the cliffs. When the sun makes its descent, they are on the mountainside camping for the night in the first spot available to pitch their tents. This is when strange events begin to unfold. Then the team starts to hear a low hum and surreal visions of flashes of distorted images, and the sight of themselves and one another happen in unison to everyone at the exact same time. Colton tells it is nothing to be alarmed of and for them to focus. But back at base camp, Carrie hears noises crackling through the radio that sound similar, but then it goes dead quiet. Then further up, Colton has a sudden flare of pain as something pulsates in his head from the sensation, and although it is done, he is left with uncomfortableness. At the same time, Brad and Kristen keep moving up when Brad suddenly releases his rope. Kristen goes into panic mode and stops in fright. Brad starts crawling straight up the mountain like a spider, his eyes glowing faintly bright and his voice cascading with the lingering sounds of her mom's. Before she knows it, he detaches her rope and almost pushes her off. Then, as suddenly as it began, Brad is snapped out of it. But without his line, he falls to his death. When Kristen explains what she witnessed, no one believes her, and that shock has messed up her mind. At base, Carrie dispatches Sean and Justin to rescue Kristen. During their ascent, Justin slips and injures his leg, forcing Sean to ascend solo and unroped. A very bad decision. At the camp, the chief's men retrieve Brad's body and take his helmet camera to radio. When he looks through the footage, it backs up what Kristen said. Clearly, Brad was possessed, and the weird noise is in the audio. Radio isolates the sound, or rather the exact type of noise, and realizes it is not static at all, but a repeating frequency, almost like something alive. Meanwhile, Sean is pushing higher, fighting through hallucinations that whisper his name and distort reality. Reminded of the chief's words about silence, its weakness, he stabilizes his breath and recovers control of himself. He makes it to Kristen. They find a place to settle for the night, resolving to climb high in the morning to re-establish radio contact. Down below, radio overlays the audio from the helmet footage with the radio static. It matches perfectly. The sound is talking, it is whispering, "I'm here, to find me." Carrie, horrified, realizes the tribal warning they received was real. The next order is for all climbers to descend immediately. But at the summit, Colton said no. He was obsessed. He claimed that around opportunities like this only present once in a lifetime. Lucky and Jesse disagree, and then they decide to turn around at dawn. That night, Lucky wakes up to Emily cutting through his ropes, her body moving in an unnatural way, and her eyes were blank. When she lunges, it looks as though she's been released from control, falling to her death. Colton was unfazed and determined to continue the climb. The next day at dawn, Sean re-established contact with Lucky, but relays Carrie's order for them to return. Though Colton ignored it, asking Sean instead to join him. And so Sean surprisingly agrees, only to secretly unhook Kristen's safety line, urges her to go down now, before it's too late. He and Colton make the ascent to the summit. At the summit, they crest to find an ancient skeleton, left there from the doomed 1959 expedition, and the glowing stone, which is unlike anything anyone has ever seen on Earth. The radio reestablishes contact with Lucky and asks all three, Sean, Colton, and Kristen, to come into comms. He's found something. The entity's signal that they've been experiencing since the beginning can be traced through their voice. If one of them has been possessed by the entity, it will reveal itself in their voice patterns. Before he could confirm, it cuts out again. Out of nowhere, Lucky reappears, now possessed and dangerous. He attacks Colton, the stone starting to thrum with the same creepy frequency. The entity jumps from Lucky to Kristen, demonstrating that it can only control one person at a time. Under its power, Kristen kills Lucky and now turns on Colton and Sean. Far below, the chief lights a huge fire and chants ancient words, while two of his warriors begin the climb, hoping to assist Sean. At the top of the mountain, the possessed Kristen is about to kill Sean when he remembers the staff the chief gave him, striking the stone with it. The sound stopped immediately. The light dissipated and Kristen collapsed, back in control, horrified by what she had done. Colton lies dying, whispering with his last breath, "This isn't over. It will come back." With the borrowed parachute from the paraglider climber, Sean and Kristen jump from the top of the mountain and gliding down the mountain safely. Sean arrives back at his home where his father greets him happily. Meanwhile, the clandestine organization behind the expedition reviews the mission report. They are already preparing for the second mission. In the end scene, we find ourselves back at the peak. The wind howls. Snow falls over Colton as he lays still and lifeless, until finally his eyes open and glow faintly. The entity has a new host,